So as Steve mentioned, I'm David Schonthal. I'm one of the members of the team that's helping to bring Matter to life. In the audience are actually a couple other of my teammates on this, Steve Gould, Steve Collins, Barbara Goodman. So we're well represented. I thought what I would do is tell you a little bit of a story about how I wound up in Chicago, where I came from and the opportunity that existed there, and when I came to Chicago, what I found here, and use that as a bit of a segue into talking about what we're building with Matter. So I think probably the best place to start is from whence I came, which is San Diego. How many of you have spent time in San Diego? Not on vacation. Okay, yeah, a couple. So those of you that have been there and gotten outside of the zoo and SeaWorld and the beaches have probably found that there's a lot going on in life sciences and healthcare in San Diego. It is a booming cluster of activity for health tech, wireless, and a number of other services in healthcare as well as in research. And this is where I spent most of my professional career, and most of that time was spent in venture capital working with early stage life sciences companies. So you can imagine that when I decided to move to Chicago, which I will readily confess was against my will. I married a woman who was living in Chicago, and she came to move to San Diego to be with me, and there was a 2-year option on her time in San Diego, but it was fully understood by anybody who'd spent time in both Chicago and San Diego that after the first winter this would be a non-issue, and she never actually decided to move back. But lo and behold, about a month away from the 2-year marker, she decided to move me back to Chicago, and I was freaked out. Because I had spent my career working in healthcare and helping to commercialize early stage technologies, and I did not know what to expect from this city. First thing I found was when I got here, it actually looked like this. So we moved 2 days before Snowmageddon. Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah, you guys remember that one. We didn't own a shovel. My dog had never seen snow. So needless to say, we were kind of off on a bad foot, but I still retained a little bit of optimism that we would find some interesting stuff to do in Chicago, but my concern was that the environment I came from was a little like this. This is not a picture of San Diego, but in terms of its economic ecosystem as it relates to healthcare, this is kind of the metaphor I would choose. Right? It was a bit of a rainforest. You had lots of small things going on the surface, you had lots of large companies that were sort of providing a canopy, interesting research going on, and lots of interesting things to explore in a community that could support you. And so I felt like this was going to be an adventure coming back to Chicago because I didn't know what kind of community organization there was, I didn't know what kind of research was going on, I didn't know what the venture community was like. I didn't hear much about it in San Diego, so I just assumed it was bad. What I did know coming from San Diego is that the community was also really well organized, so much so that they actually gave the cluster a name. Whether you like it or not, San Diego is sort of referred to as Biotech Beach, which I'm sure is in some way a bit of a counterpoint to Silicon Valley. But it's incredibly densely populated. So this is a view of the 600 life sciences companies that exist inside of San Diego, concentrated in this area inside of this circle, which is really around Torrey Pines and La Jolla, where a number of the research institutions like Burnham and Salk and Scripps and a number of the hospitals exist. And even if you zoom in, for example, on the ecosystem that supports early stage life sciences, it's also rather plentiful and also rather dense. So here's a picture of just the CROs in San Diego zooming in on Torrey Pines alone. Right? So not only is there great research, but there's also a lot of companies that are interested in helping that research get to market. And then, as I mentioned, there's over 600 life sciences companies in the greater San Diego area. And in 2012, the year that I moved, there was about $1.5 billion in health tech venture capital invested. So it was a very mature, is a very mature ecosystem when it comes to health technology. So that left me with the question, well, what do I expect when I come to Chicago? And what I really expected was this, right? If the metaphor for San Diego was a rainforest, I fully expected Chicago would be a bit of an arid climate for innovation in health tech. Although in fairness, with Abbott and Baxter, I figured I should at least give it an oasis and a body of water because there were a couple of trees. But then I figured, well, that's too warm. So it's probably more like some weird Arctic version of that, which is really exactly what I found 2 days after arrival. But the reality was really exciting. The reality was totally different than the expectation. The reality is that Chicago is home to a number of companies and organizations and institutions that drive the healthcare economy, not just regionally in the Midwest, but also nationally. There is some amazing stuff going on in Chicago. We have more physicians per capita than any city in the country. We've got an enormous number of large healthcare and biotech companies. We've got a tremendous amount of research going on. And if you look at it geographically, this is really kind of where the problem starts to pop up, right? So unlike San Diego, where you cluster everything really neatly in an area that's not that far away, and when you factor in that everybody in San Diego drives a car, it's even closer. But, you know, here's some of our pharma companies that exist up in Lake County. Here's a sort of broader swath when you consider the device world, which goes all the way down to northern Indiana, and as far north as Wisconsin when you get into GE. And layer on top of that some of the medical products companies and GPOs that exist. Layer on top of that some of the payers and health IT companies. Obviously our research universities and hospital systems. And then you throw in things like associations with the American Medical Association, the American Hospital Association, the American Dental Association, all of these associations that are headquartered here in Chicago. It becomes a fairly dense population if you look at it as a region, but not dense geographically. So one of the things that exists in San Diego that makes it such an exciting place to work is that there's lots of cross-pollination. There's lots of serendipity. If I go and walk around Torrey Mesa, or I go and walk around a certain neighborhood in San Diego, chances are I'm going to bump into people in the community that I want to be a part of. There's lots of events, there's lots of spaces for people to innovate together, and that was the thing that seemed to be missing in Chicago. Lots of opportunity, lots of content, lots of people to help. But when would they ever see each other? When would somebody from Abbott Park ever bump into somebody from Argonne National Lab? Despite the fact that there could be a really interesting opportunity in energy and devices, or engineering in a medical device, or some sort of therapeutic and a health IT aspect to it that could make people more compliant or help patients with drug delivery, when are these people ever going to bump into each other? And furthermore, unlike San Diego, where there's tremendous depth in things like biotech, and unlike Minnesota, where there's tremendous depth in things like medical device, one of the things that Chicago had, which actually in some ways makes it a little bit more analogous to a rainforest in San Diego, is its diversity. Right? We've got huge companies, Abbott, Baxter, Takeda, Astellas, Medline, and then we also have a tremendous amount of research, top research going on here. We've got great teaching hospitals and practicing hospitals. We've got payers and providers. All of the different elements of the healthcare ecosystem are not only represented in Chicago, they're fairly prominent in Chicago. So rather than thinking about how we might differentiate ourselves to be a better biotech cluster, be a better medical device hub, why not look at Chicago as an opportunity to catalyze more interaction in the diverse ecosystem that exists? And then on top of that, it's a growing community. So in addition to those big companies that I mentioned, you look at this slide and it's just a sampling of the variety of startups in Chicago that are focusing on health tech. And that includes health IT, it includes medical device, it includes biotech, it includes biotech tools, it includes service providers. There's a tremendous amount going on, which is really exciting and really unexpected for somebody who arrived here in 2011. And on top of that, there's a number of organizations that are doing amazing things to try and pull this community together. You've got iBio, Bart Goodman is here from iBio. You've got organizations like Chicago Innovation Mentors, which Steve Gould heads up. You've got the Chicago Biomedical Consortium. You've got all of these different institutes within universities. And these are all in existence. Health 2.0, which I'm sure almost everybody in the room knows because Jasmine and Sue are ubiquitous. And full of energy. I don't know where they get it. There's a tremendous amount of people that are bringing groups together, but yet still, where do all of these groups congregate? Where are they all going to bump into each other? Where is serendipity going to occur? And that's really crucial when it comes to innovation and bringing things to market. Multidisciplinary thinking and interaction. So, overlay this with an increasing number of resources. We can get into this. I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with the funding community here, as well as the growing number of exits and IPOs in the life sciences and healthcare community. But the challenges remain, right? The challenges for Chicago are we still lack access to industry knowledge and mentorship for our entrepreneurs because our expertise is spread all over the region. Our expertise can be 100 110 miles away if we're up in Lake County and who we need to talk to is down at a device company. We lack a sense of community and connection to one another. Yes, researchers may know one another, and yes, physicians may know one another, but how many engineers know biologists? And how many cardiologists know entrepreneurs, right? This is something we can do much better. Acquisition of talent. And forgive me if anybody works for one of these large companies in Lake County, but if you're a young student graduating from university and you want to come move to Chicago, do you really want to be spending all of your time up in Lake County? What about the young people that have a lot to offer to the city of Chicago, and the city of Chicago has a lot to offer them? Wouldn't it be great if more people were centralized in a vibrant part of town? Interactions and relationships with others in the healthcare value chain, like payers, providers, people that can help with clinical trials and reimbursement. And then finally, places to learn and build across different functional areas of healthcare. I think everybody in this room hopefully appreciates that the way we interact with our drugs in 5 years from now is probably going to look different than the way we do it today. The mobile devices we carry around are going to provide us insights about our health that they're not doing right now. To think about healthcare innovation as just drugs or just devices without thinking about the technology component that overlays them is, I think, a bit short-sighted. So instead of thinking about them as sort of cylindrical silos, why not think about the opportunity that celebrates our greatest asset, which is our ability to cross silos in our diversity. So a number of us sat back and said, well, something should be done about this. And really what we wanted to do is create a place that pulled the elements of this together. And the outgrowth of that was this concept called Matter, which coming this fall will be located just down the hall here on the 12th floor of the Merchandise Mart. And that's not by accident. We recognize that the life science community, the healthcare innovation community, has a lot to learn from the community that exists in this space. Device entrepreneurs, biotech entrepreneurs may offer a lot of technical expertise, but there's probably something to be learned about user experience and design. Similarly, there's a lot of talented people that work in this space that could be adding value to life sciences and healthcare that may not have an opportunity to get involved and to find an inroad into that community. We're hoping to do a lot to bridge those two gaps together. So this is really what Matter's about. I'll read it quickly, and then I'll move on so that there's plenty of time left for what you all showed up to see. But Matter's a collaboration of healthcare entrepreneurs and industry leaders working together in a shared space to individually and most importantly, collectively fuel the future of healthcare innovation. We're breaking down barriers, bridging connections, and embracing experimentation in an industry often defined by disconnectedness. Through mentorship, networking, and shared resource, we illuminate a path to creating successful new ventures. Located in the heart of Chicago, and more specifically in this building, Matter connects scientists, entrepreneurs, and inventors to make, build, and transform visionary ideas into a reality. We are truly here to do something that matters, and we are hoping that the things that come out of Matter really shape people's lives in an extraordinarily positive way. So, what is Matter? Matter is going to be a space that takes these three main disciplines of healthcare innovation, IT, biotech, and device, and puts them in a space where they can work together and where interesting things can be found in the overlapping areas. And layer on top of that all of the diversity of this ecosystem that exists, right? Providers, investors, startups, academia, payers, service providers, organizations and institutions like the AMA and the AHA and the ADA that can support and add value to innovation as it's being developed. We expect all of these different groups to come together and not only do things that affect their ability to get to market faster in each of their verticals, but also find interesting things to do together in an environment that they might not have found out before. So, the mission of our organization is pretty simple, and it's this: heroic new businesses are built when great minds work together. The future of healthcare depends on it. I hope all of you in healthcare would agree with that. If you do, we'd love to see you down the hall at Matter in a few short months from now, where interesting things are going to be happening. One quick other thought that you just going to bolt on as an adjunct to this. One of the things that's most exciting to me about Chicago goes back to the beginning of this story, coming from San Diego to an entirely new city for the most part. And I had come from a place where I was sort of a medium-sized fish in what I would argue was a pretty small pond. And I was nervous about coming to the city of Chicago, which is significantly larger than San Diego. significantly more mature, significantly more established. How would I, as a single individual, make a difference and would make an impact? And I was delighted to find that just about anybody in Chicago who has an interest in making a difference and wanting to create something that matters, create something of value for the community, has a welcome place at this table. So anybody who's thinking about doing something bold, anybody who's thinking about doing something for the community, doing something for people, this is a great place to be. I think the Midwest is a great place to be. And I hope that all of you will take action on your ideas and do it in places like this in 1871, do it in places like Matter, or any of the other ecosystems that exist around the Midwest to help make people's lives better. Thanks for having me, and